Ranger in Time, Long Road to Freedom, Chapter 7, Free Indeed. Sarah and Jessie walked through the trees with Ranger at their side. After a long while, Sarah couldn't tell how much time had passed. She heard the rush of water. They turned north and followed the river until the sun came up, painting the water purple-pink. "You sure this river's going to lead us to Philadelphia?" Jessie asked, yawning. Sarah nodded, but not just yet. She motioned Jessie into the trees. "We need to hide until it's dark again. Try to rest." "I'm hungry," Jessie said. Their dried beef and bread from the plantation were long gone. Sarah searched around and found a handful of berries. Long ago, Mama had taught her about the berries in Mrs. Bradley's garden and the nearby woods, so Sarah knew which were good to eat. They weren't quite ripe, but they were safe, and she was afraid to go far. She ate one, puckering at the taste, and handed the rest to Jessie. He tasted one and scrunched up his face. "These don't taste like the berries Mama used to pick for us." "No, they need more sunshine," Sarah sighed and smiled a bit. "But Mama would want you to eat them to stay strong. She'd be proud of you, coming all this way." "You think?" Jessie stared, as the puffy clouds rolling through the sky. Then he looked back at Sarah. "I figured she's probably watching over us now." "I figured that too." Sarah nodded at the berries in his hand. "Finish those and get some rest." Jessie ate the rest of the berries, then sprawled out under a drooping pine branch. Sarah crept in beside him and hugged her knees to her chest. She tried to stay awake, but the sun got warm and her eyes grew heavy. Soon she was asleep. Ranger sat close to them all day. He was hungry and thirsty. Twice, red squirrels went racing past, their bushy tails flying behind them. But Ranger knew his job wasn't done. When the sun went down and the air cooled, Ranger nuzzled Sarah's ankle. She sat up and shook Jessie awake. "Get up, it's time to go." That night, Sarah guessed they made 20 miles before the sun came up, and it was time to hide again. But the next night was blustery and stormy. They couldn't travel as quickly. Sarah and Jessie slogged across swollen creeks, holding tight to each other's hand. Ranger stayed close beside them and never slowed down, even though his paws were sore and thick with mud. Once a tree limb came crashing down and nearly landed on Jessie, and the river was raging wild. Sarah was afraid to get too close to the bank. Finally, the rain stopped. The sky was starting to brighten when they came to a road. Sarah and Jessie watched from the trees as carts and carriages rolled by. Some carried fancy-dressed men and women. Others hauled wagons of potatoes and carrots and greens. One held a crate filled with squawking chickens. A boy who looked about Sarah's age pulled a wagon loaded with newspapers. One blew off the pile in a gust of wind, and when the boy was gone, Sarah chased it down. "Jessie, look!" She held up the newspaper and pointed to the biggest letters at the top of the page. "You know I can't read," he said. "I'll teach you. When we find a place to live, it says Pennsylvania Freeman. And see this?" She pointed to a line of smaller print and whispered, "Philadelphia." "We made it?" Jessie's eyes were huge. Sarah nodded. "We must be near a market. Follow me." They kept to the edge of the road until there were no more trees, but then they could hide in the crowd. Sarah took a deep breath and pulled Jessie into a sea of all kinds of people, brown faces and black faces and pink faces, all going about their day together. There were men in top hats and women in long dresses. Sarah looked down at her own dress, brown with river mud. They shouldn't have to hide anymore, but they needed to look like free black people who had every right to be walking through the market. How would they blend in such a fright? Sarah didn't know where to start. She'd have to find work here and a place for her and Jessie to stay. But where? Her eyes burned with tears. What if she'd made Jessie a promise she couldn't keep? "Are you lost?" A girl a little older than Sarah stepped up to them. Her faded blue dress was worn but clean. She held a basket with bread and greens and something wrapped in brown paper. Ranger sniffed at it. "Fish." "Yes," said Jessie, "and hungry too." Sarah cut him off. "We're fine." Her heart thudded in her chest. Maybe this girl was a former slave too, or a free black who would help them. But it was hard to know who to trust. The girl nodded, then reached into her basket, broke off a piece of bread, and held it out. Jessie grabbed it before Sarah could stop him. He took a big bite and chewed, crumbs spilling down his dusty shirt. The girl reached down and stroked Ranger's head while her eyes took in Jessie's torn pants, Sarah's muddy dress and shoes. Finally, they met Sarah's eyes. "You're fugitives," the girl whispered. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. She was afraid, but she couldn't keep her promise to Jessie without help. "I have money. Can you help us find a place to stay?" Sarah whispered. The girl looked around nervously. "I think so," she said. "There's a church nearby." Jessie narrowed his eyes. "Sarah says, just 'cause some place is a church don't mean they count us as neighbors." "That's quite true, but this church will." The girl took off without saying anything more, weaving her way through the market. Sarah and Jessie followed her along one street. Then she seemed to change her mind. She ducked out of the crowd and led them down a quieter alley. The girl kept looking over her shoulder. It made Sarah feel jumpy. If Pennsylvania was a free state, why was the girl scared? She led them to a building made of bricks and stone. An inspection above the door caught Sarah's eye. If the Son, therefore, shall make you free, ye shall be free indeed. Was it true? Pennsylvania was a free state, but everything still felt hurried and heart-pounding and dangerous. Sarah looked at the girl with the basket. Tears burned in her eyes. Again. Are we safe now? Shh, hurry. The girl opened the door and motioned urgently for them to get inside. The sad truth is, none of us are safe with all the slave hunters around, she said as they stepped into the cool darkness of the church. Wait here. She motioned to a bench, set down her basket, and disappeared through a doorway. Sarah's stomach ached from worry. She reached into her pocket and felt the feather's soft edges. Keep us safe, Mama, she prayed. Let the words over the door be true. Ranger settled next to Jessie, and the boy scratched behind Ranger's ear. No one scratched like Luke, though. Ranger missed his home family. He missed cookouts and hide-and-seek and horses. Ranger's ears picked up. He trotted to the door. It was closed, but Ranger could hear sounds coming through the cracks. Horse hooves, a whinny, a whinny, a man's angry voice. Ranger barked. Shh, Sarah hissed at him from the bench. Then the basket girl came running in with a tall, plump woman beside her. This way, children. The woman motioned them towards the door. There are slave catchers outside. Come with me.